When I first decided to visit Mexico, I was full of excitement and a bit of nervousness. Living in Houston, I had heard countless stories about how beautiful the country is, especially from my boyfriend, whose family lives there. I had never traveled outside the US, so this was a big adventure for me. I spent weeks planning my trip, preparing for every detail. Packing my suitcase was a fun but tricky task because I wanted to make sure I had everything I needed. I packed light clothes for the warm weather, comfortable shoes for walking through the cities, which I hoped I wouldn't need too much. Hi, my name is Sama, and you are listening to the Fox Lingo podcast. I created this podcast because for many years I was trying to learn and speak English, like native speakers. But it was very hard for me because the way we have been taught languages from school, courses, and language academies has not been the best, maybe because the methods are too boring and tedious. Until I discovered that the best way to learn any language is listening. That's how children do it. I really like podcasts because you hear natives speak their own language. Another advantage is that you can listen to it anytime and whenever you want. Thanks to this method, I now speak Spanish, English, Portuguese, and a little German and French. That's why every week I upload a video podcast to my YouTube channel so you can learn for free. I do that thanks to you subscribing and giving me a like. Remember that if you want me to talk about a specific topic that you like, you can leave me a comment and I will be happy to do so. Today, I am talking about my experience in Mexico, but you can choose the topic of the next video. This trip felt special for many reasons. First of all, it was my first time traveling to another country. And second, it was the perfect opportunity to practice my Spanish, which I had been learning for a while. I had studied the language in classes, but I knew that traveling to a Spanish-speaking country would give me a real chance to use it in everyday conversations. It's one thing to learn a language from books and apps, but it's a whole different experience when you're in a place where people speak it naturally all the time. I was excited to see how much I had learned and how well I could communicate with the locals. The day of my trip finally arrived, and I felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and curiosity. Walking into the airport in Houston made everything feel real. I was about to step out of my comfort zone, leave my home country, and dive into a completely different culture. But I knew it was going to be worth it. Traveling is such an important experience for anyone, especially if you're learning a new language. Not only do you get to practice what you've learned in real situations, but you also get to immerse yourself in a new culture, meet new people, and see the world from a different perspective. When you travel, you open yourself up to so many new things. In my case, I was eager to learn more about Mexican culture, food, and history. I had read about it in books and seen it in movies, but I knew that experiencing it firsthand would be something entirely different. Traveling also pushes you out of your routine and makes you more adaptable. You have to navigate new places, try to understand signs, and communicate with people, which can be challenging but also incredibly rewarding. It makes you more confident, and you realize that you're capable of so much more than you thought. Learning a language is just one part of the equation. When you travel, you also get to learn about the people who speak that language, their customs, their traditions, and their way of life. It deepens your understanding and makes you appreciate the language even more. That's why I think traveling is such an important part of learning. It takes everything you've studied and puts it into real-world situations. And to be honest, there's no better way to learn than by doing. When I finally arrived in Mexico, I was thrilled. The vibrant colors, the lively streets, and the warm weather immediately made me feel welcome. I was eager to explore the cities, try the local food, and connect with the people. Every conversation was a chance to practice my Spanish, and every new experience taught me something about the culture. This trip was more than just a vacation. It was a learning experience that opened my eyes to a new world. Traveling to another country, especially when you're learning the language, is such an enriching experience. It gives you the chance to see how the language is spoken in real life, hear different accents, and understand the rhythm of conversations. Plus, you learn so much more than just language. You learn about the people, their history, their way of thinking, and their day-to-day lives. That's why I believe everyone should travel, especially if they are learning a new language. It's an opportunity to grow, learn, and experience things you'll never forget. So, if you're studying a language or just looking to expand your horizons, I highly recommend visiting another country. It might feel a little scary at first, but it's one of the most rewarding experiences you can have. You'll come back with a new appreciation for the language you're learning, a deeper understanding of the culture, and memories that will last a lifetime. Traveling isn't just about seeing new places. It's about learning, growing, and becoming a better version of yourself. When I first arrived in Mexico City, the moment felt surreal. I had been planning this trip for weeks, and after all the excitement and nervousness, I was finally here. As I stepped off the plane, I immediately felt the warmth of the air, and a wave of anticipation washed over me. This wasn't just any trip. This was my first time leaving the United States, and I was about to experience something completely new. The airport was bustling with people, some speaking in Spanish, some in English, and I could already feel the difference in atmosphere. It was a bit overwhelming, but in the best way possible. I was excited to explore everything this city had to offer. After grabbing my suitcase, I made my way through the crowded terminal. Luckily, my boyfriend's cousin was there to pick me up, which made everything a lot easier. As we drove out of the airport and into the city, I couldn't help but stare out of the window in awe. Mexico City was massive. I had heard it was one of the largest cities in the world, but seeing it with my own eyes was something else. The streets were packed with cars, buses, and people walking everywhere. There were tall buildings, colorful murals on the walls, and trees lining the sidewalks. It felt like the city was alive, buzzing with energy, and I couldn't wait to explore every inch of it. We drove through several neighborhoods on the way to the apartment where I would be staying. Each one had its own unique character. Some areas had modern skyscrapers, while others had charming older buildings with beautiful balconies and intricate designs. It was such a fascinating mix of old and new. The streets were full of life, with people sitting outside cafes, vendors selling food on the corners, and music playing in the background. Everywhere I looked, there was something interesting happening. When we finally arrived at the apartment, I was pleasantly surprised. It was located in a neighborhood called Condesa, which my boyfriend had told me was one of the trendiest areas in the city. The apartment was small but cozy, with big windows that let in a lot of natural light. From the balcony, I could see the treetops of a nearby park and the rooftops of colorful buildings. The view was stunning, and I felt an immediate sense of calm and excitement all at once. This would be my home for the next few weeks, and I couldn't wait to make the most of it. After unpacking a few things, I decided to take a walk and explore the neighborhood. The streets were lined with trees, and there were plenty of small cafes, restaurants, and shops. I noticed that people in this area loved to walk or ride their bikes, and there was a relaxed, laid-back vibe that made me feel right at home. I stopped at a local cafe to grab a coffee and sit outside for a bit. The coffee was strong and delicious, and as I sat there, I couldn't help but people watch. It was fascinating to see how different life was here compared to Houston. Everything felt slower, more relaxed, and people seemed to really enjoy their time outside. As I continued walking, I stumbled upon a street market. It was filled with stalls selling everything from fresh fruits and vegetables to handmade crafts and jewelry. The smell of freshly cooked food filled the air, and I was immediately drawn to a stand selling tacos. I had heard that the street food in Mexico was amazing, and I was eager to try it for myself. I ordered 2 tacos al pastor, which is a traditional Mexican dish made with marinated pork, pineapple, onions, and cilantro. When I took my first bite, I was blown away by the explosion of flavors. The meat was tender and flavorful, and the combination of sweet and savory was perfect. It was hands down one of the best things I had ever eaten. After satisfying my hunger, I continued to explore the city. I made my way to the Zócalo, which is the main square in Mexico City, and one of the largest public plazas in the world. When I arrived, I was amazed by the sheer size of it. The plaza was surrounded by historical buildings, including the Metropolitan Cathedral and the National Palace. Both were stunning in their own right, with intricate architecture that told the story of Mexico's rich history. I stood in the middle of the square, taking it all in, feeling small in such a grand, historic space. It was incredible to think about how much history had taken place here, and now I was standing in the same spot. The following days were filled with more exploration. One of the highlights was visiting Chapultepec Park, which is one of the largest city parks in the world. It was like an oasis in the middle of the bustling city, with lush green spaces, lakes, and walking paths. I spent hours wandering through the park, enjoying the fresh air and the peaceful atmosphere. I even visited the Chapultepec Castle, which sits atop a hill in the park. The castle was beautiful, and from the top I had a breathtaking view of the city below. One of my favorite parts of the trip was getting to experience the local food. Every meal was an adventure. I tried dishes like chilaquiles for breakfast, which is a traditional Mexican dish made with fried tortillas, salsa, cheese, and eggs. I also had the chance to try mole, a rich, flavorful sauce made with chocolate and spices, which was unlike anything I had ever tasted before. Each meal was a new discovery, and I was constantly amazed by the variety of flavors and ingredients used in Mexican cuisine. The people I met along the way were incredibly warm and welcoming. Even though my Spanish wasn't perfect, I was able to communicate with most people, and they were always patient and kind. It was a great opportunity to practice my language skills, and I felt more confident with each conversation. The locals were proud of their culture and eager to share it with me, whether it was through food, stories, or simply a friendly chat. As I continued to explore Mexico City, I realized how much I loved being in a place that was so different from what I was used to. It was eye-opening to see how people lived, worked, and enjoyed life in a different part of the world. The culture was vibrant and full of life, and I found myself falling in love with the city more and more each day. I couldn't wait to see what else Mexico had in store for me as I planned to visit more cities in the coming weeks. After a few more days of exploring Mexico City, I was already falling in love with the place. But there was still so much more of Mexico to see, and my next stop was Cancun. I had always dreamed of visiting Cancun, with its famous white sandy beaches and turquoise waters. It felt like a dream come true when I finally booked my ticket and packed my bags once again. Saying goodbye to Mexico City was bittersweet, but I was excited for the adventure that lay ahead. The flight from Mexico City to Cancun was short, but the change in scenery was dramatic. As soon as I stepped off the plane, I was hit by the warm, humid air and the scent of the ocean. It was completely different from the bustling streets and historic sights of Mexico City. The moment I arrived, I could feel that this trip was going to be special. I checked into a small but beautiful hotel near the beach. The room had large windows that opened up to a view of the sea, and I could hear the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. It was so peaceful, and I instantly felt relaxed. After settling in, I changed into my swimsuit and made my way down to the beach. The sand was incredibly soft under my feet, and the water was the clearest, most beautiful shade of blue I had ever seen. I spent the entire afternoon lounging by the ocean, soaking up the sun and swimming in the warm waters. It was paradise. The next day, I decided to do some exploring around Cancun. One of the first places I visited was the Mayan ruins of Tulum. It was a bit of a drive from Cancun, but it was worth every minute. When I arrived, I was blown away by the beauty and history of the place. The ruins were perched on a cliff overlooking the sea, and the view was breathtaking. As I walked through the ancient structures, I couldn't help but imagine what life must have been like for the Mayan people who lived here centuries ago. It was fascinating to see the remnants of such a powerful and advanced civilization. After spending the morning at Tulum, I headed to a cenote, which is a natural sinkhole filled with crystal clear water. Swimming in a cenote had been on my bucket list for a long time, and now I was finally going to experience it. The cenote I visited was hidden in the jungle, and it felt like stepping into another world. The water was so clear that I could see all the way to the bottom, and it was refreshingly cool after the hot sun. I spent hours swimming and floating in the water, surrounded by nature. It was such a peaceful and magical experience, and I couldn't stop thinking about how lucky I was to be here. Later that evening, I went back to Cancun and decided to treat myself to some local food. I found a small restaurant near the beach that served fresh seafood, and I ordered ceviche and grilled fish. The flavors were out of this world. The fish was perfectly cooked, and the ceviche was tangy and refreshing. I had never tasted seafood this fresh before, and it was definitely one of the best meals I had during my trip. The following day, I decided to take a boat tour to Isla Mujeres, a small island off the coast of Cancun. The boat ride was exhilarating, with the wind in my hair and the sun shining brightly overhead. When we arrived at the island, I was immediately struck by how beautiful and peaceful it was. The beaches were even more stunning than in Cancun, with powdery white sand and crystal clear waters. I spent the day snorkeling, exploring the island, and relaxing on the beach. It was the perfect escape from the busy city life. One of the highlights of my time in Cancun was visiting the underwater museum, known as the MUSA. It's a collection of sculptures submerged in the ocean, and you can either snorkel or dive to see them up close. I chose to snorkel, and it was one of the most unique experiences I've ever had. Swimming among the statues, with colorful fish darting around me, felt surreal. It was like being in another world, and I was in awe of the beauty and creativity of the sculptures. It's a memory that will stay with me forever. As my time in Cancun was coming to an end, I realized how much I had grown during this trip. Not only had I experienced new places and tried new foods, but I had also improved my Spanish. Speaking with locals, ordering food, and asking for directions had all helped me practice the language in a real-world setting. It wasn't always easy, but it was incredibly rewarding. I also noticed how much more confident I felt after navigating my way through new cities and meeting new people. This trip had taught me so much, not just about Mexico, but about myself as well. Traveling to a new country and experiencing a different culture had opened my eyes to the beauty of the world and the importance of stepping out of my comfort zone. I had learned that travel is about more than just seeing new places. It's about growing as a person, learning from others, and embracing the unknown. This trip had been everything I hoped for and more, and I knew that it wouldn't be my last adventure. The day before I was set to leave, I took one last walk along the beach, watching the sunset over the ocean. The sky was painted with shades of pink, orange, and purple, and the sound of the waves was soothing. It was the perfect way to end my time in Cancun. As I stood there, I felt grateful for the experiences I had and the memories I made. Traveling had given me a new perspective, and I couldn't wait to see where my next journey would take me. As my incredible journey in Mexico came to an end, I felt a mix of emotions. I was excited to return to Houston, but I also knew I would miss the vibrant culture, delicious food, and warm-hearted people I had met along the way. Saying goodbye to my boyfriend's family was bittersweet. They had welcomed me with open arms, and I felt like I had become part of their family. We shared hugs, laughter, and promises to stay in touch. They even taught me a few more phrases in Spanish, which I appreciated as a valuable gift. On the flight back to Houston, I reflected on all the experiences I had. I had explored the bustling streets of Mexico City, learned about its rich history, and tasted food that ignited my senses. I had marveled at the ancient Mayan ruins, swam in breathtaking cenotes, and enjoyed the beauty of Cancun. Each moment taught me something new, not just about Mexico, but about myself as well. I realized how important it is to step out of our comfort zones and embrace new experiences. Traveling to different countries opens our minds and hearts, allowing us to learn from diverse cultures and perspectives. I also discovered how traveling can enhance language skills. Speaking Spanish with locals gave me confidence and motivation to keep learning. I realized that language is a bridge to connect with others and understand their stories. This journey ignited my passion for travel and language learning even more. I am eager to continue exploring new countries and sharing my adventures with others. As I returned to my everyday life in Houston, I felt inspired to document my travels and experiences in a video podcast. I want to narrate my adventures in English to help others learn the language while discovering the beauty of different cultures. Traveling is not just about seeing new places. It's about personal growth, connection, and understanding the world around us. I hope to motivate others to travel, learn new languages, and embrace the adventure that life offers. In the future, I plan to explore even more countries and share those stories with my audience. Traveling is a journey of the heart and mind, and I can't wait to continue this beautiful adventure, one trip at a time. Well, I think we have reached the end. For my part, I loved talking to you about my trip to Mexico. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us an idea for the next topic in the comments. I say goodbye, but your learning continues. You can watch the following video so you don't miss a beat. See you later.